The Last of Us Episode 3 brought us something special as it told this true love story that was heart-wrenchingly beautiful as it was gut-wrenchingly heartbreaking by the end. And I just gotta say, for the Last of Us universe here, this is the happy ending. But yeah, it really moved me. It was like an emotional roller coaster. It even brought a tear to my eye by the end. And I'm not the only one that thinks that. Most people are praising the shit out of this episode. I've seen reviews upon reviews and articles and all this stuff over the past week or so, just saying that it is fantastic, and I hugely agree with it. But yet, why is there still so much hate online about this episode as well? Because there definitely is. And I know that the obvious answer is homophobia exists, okay? I know that it can definitely come down to that. I think that plays a huge part of it. But I don't think it's just as simple as that. And I want to preface this by saying that just because you didn't like the episode doesn't necessarily say anything about your character or values. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're an unaccepting person or anything like that, because there are fair criticisms to this episode. One being that I do think it's too early to have deviated from our main cast in just the third episode. If you haven't played the game, you might not be attached to Joel and Ellie just yet. You might not care all that much, and it might feel like a really strange deviation for just the third episode in. Just as you're starting to get settled in, it's kind of like emotional whiplash. It's like, what? Who are these characters now? If you don't know about Bill from the game, you might not give a shit, and I kind of understand that. Another fair criticism that I'd say about this is that because it does deviate from our main cast, it doesn't move the overall plot forward. I do agree with that. I don't necessarily care all that much about that, because I think that an episode like this is worth dropping the plot for an episode, but I do understand if that kind of pisses you off. You have to wait a whole week and everything, and it does also change from the game. That is another criticism that I've seen thrown around quite a bit. Again, I don't really necessarily care all that much. I played the game. I don't really care about the character of Bill that much in the game. Maybe you do. Maybe he really, really resonates with you. I don't know. But I still say that it is worth the trade-off for this episode, no matter what. Because yes, it changed things from the game, but as Neil Druckmann himself said, in deviation still comes fidelity, which I think is really important and a different way to think about it when it comes to adapting a story. Is it one for one exactly the same? No, it's not. But it stays faithful to the aesthetic, the feel of it. That's really the important part. Not exactly the building blocks A to B exact same thing, you know what I mean? Like, that's not really the important part. They can make small changes here as long as it still feels like it's kind of coming from the same place. And I think that episode 3 only really builds on this world that much more. But when you do think about the actual plot that happens, the actual events that take place for our main characters in Joel and Ellie, all that happens in episode 3 is they get a cut. That is literally the only thing that really happens in terms of what we're going to see in the oncoming episodes. That's the only thing. And I get that that is a fair criticism. But if you're one of these people who are going on and on about how you wish there was more zombie action and you're not here to watch love and gay people, if you're one of these people, I truly don't understand what appeals to you about the game or the show or anything that has to do with The Last of Us. The Last of Us, to its core, yes, is a zombie game. And before you nerds say anything, zombie is a blanket term. It covers all things from infected things to actual undead characters, all that kind of shit. Don't get me on that. I don't give a shit. They're zombies, okay? Just before we get into anything like that. But I do have to say, despite The Last of Us being focused on zombies, that's kind of the main appeal going in, I do have to say that it's sort of a situation where The Last of Us definitely pulls the rug from under you, because The Last of Us is not about the zombies. That's not the important part. Much like any of the best zombie fiction out there, The Last of Us is really about the humanity. It's about the survival. It's about all of these different sort of things. It's about the drama. If you are going into this show not expecting drama, not expecting relationship drama, not expecting all this kind of stuff, I don't know what show you think you're watching. I don't know what you're in this for, really. I don't get what appeals to you about the game that the show doesn't so far. Because if you're only in this for the zombie action and all you want is just bang, bang, bang gun stuff, watch something else. And for that matter, play something else when it comes to the game as well. If you're only playing the Last of Us game just for the action zombie moments, play fucking Doom and Doom Eternal, Play Uncharted, which is similar but a bit more action focused. Play fucking Call of Duty Zombies. Do they still make that mode? Play Dead Rising. It's an oldie but a goodie. There's a ton of other games that you can play that are just action focused, you know? And the games that I just named then are also great, but they are just action focused. You're not actually in there to care about it. The Last of Us, though, is something different. It's the thing that has appealed to me anyway, and I feel like most people, in that you actually care about it. The story is so much more advanced than many other video games out there. Not all of them, you know, there are a lot of games with great narratives and all that kind of stuff, but The Last of Us, if you ask me, is probably the best one out there. It excels at storytelling. And so it only made sense for them to adapt this into a TV show. And so if you're, yeah, like I said, if you're in this only for the action, that's a strange place to be coming from, if you ask me. That's just my opinion though, but I don't really get it. Really, what I truly think is that the people saying that they just want action, they don't want to watch this gay stuff, well, they're trying to cover that homophobia, aren't they? That's what I think. If you're one of the people out there watching this and you just wanted more action and you don't feel that way, fair enough, whatever, I'm not attacking you. But I think a lot of other people feel that way. They're just not allowed to say that they don't accept gay people, right? But I have to ask these sorts of people, the people that are going on about how like, oh, this didn't feel like The Last of Us, this felt like Brokeback Mountain, because that's literally the only gay piece of media that they can fucking think of, which is also frustrating because it's like Brokeback Mountain came out in what, 2005 or something. Can you come up with more of a relevant fucking complaint than that, you know? I don't know. It bothers me. The other thing that bothers me is that people keep relating The Last of Us episode to Brokeback Mountain, but they have nothing to do with each other. Brokeback Mountain, hot take here, is a film about lust. If you've seen the film, it is really about these two people who only see each other once a year just to have sex. They don't have like a true relationship because of the time that they're in. They don't get to do that. They feel like they don't get to do that anyway. And there's tragedy in there, and I think it's overall a pretty good movie. But The Last of Us episode 3, it's not just sex, you know, it's a relationship, it's love, it's a marriage. And with that being said, it's also not graphically sexual or anything like that. You know, you're not seeing any of the gory details there. You're not seeing any of that sort of stuff. Obviously, it's a fucking TV show. But the whole thing is that people are complaining about seeing these gay people on screen and whatever, right? They're like,
oh, I couldn't possibly look at that.
But they're saying it as if they're supposed to be sexually attracted to it. They're saying it as if they couldn't possibly look at it because what? It's going to make them gay or something? Like, I don't really get what they're so threatened by. If you're like this older man, which I assume is who most of the people who are complaining about it, and you've established yourself as a straight guy, everyone knows you're a straight guy. No one gives a fuck if you watch the one episode of this zombie TV show about gay people that doesn't reflect on you in any way. You can be moved by this relationship just as you can be by a straight relationship in fiction. It's not about sexuality. It's not about you being attracted to these people or anything like that. It's not about you. I don't know. It doesn't make you gay for caring about other gay characters. I think it's an absurd claim, and I think that people who are saying all of these things, again, are really just hiding behind the things that they're not allowed to say, I suppose. They're like, I don't want to watch it because I don't want my kids seeing it. Well, for one, a kid probably shouldn't be watching The Last of Us, right? Technically. But, you know, I would have watched it when I was a kid, so that's an empty criticism, I'll admit. But what, you're okay with them watching the fucking, Tess getting killed in the last episode, all the violence and stuff that's gonna take place, that has taken place, but you're not okay with them seeing a relationship. What we see in this episode is a true, long-lasting, like 20-year relationship. There's something real there. This is about humanity. And this episode overall is very much also about survival versus living. The episode definitely questions what is better, to live longer, to live as long as you possibly can, or to live fuller, to really make meaning and purpose in your life. And the character of Bill really learns that in this episode as he finally comes to the conclusion that, Frank is the reason for him to be alive. And it's the most fucking romantic conclusion, though violent and horrible and sad as well. But it's the most romantic conclusion that a story like this really could have come to. While I disagree personally with the decision that Bill made, personally, I can disagree with things about these characters as well and still love it. I feel like you should keep living if you can. There's always hope. There's always a way to keep going. And I feel like that should always be the goal. Personally, I feel like if I, was in a zombie apocalypse or whatever, my goal would be to keep living. I would hope to find meaning as well. I would hope to, all that stuff. I'd hope to be happy, but survival is key. to me. And the whole episode was really about that ebb and flow between their values here, in that Frank's values were more so, his key value was more about living, making purpose, and actually wanting to be a happy, normal kind of person. He wanted to make friends. He wanted to paint his fucking house, all this stuff, which is just adorable. And by the end, Bill comes to the conclusion that Frank was probably more so right, that their love was something special, that was something that he didn't want to live without. And I just hugely respect that, and I don't get anybody who watches this and doesn't get moved by that, who doesn't care about that, who just wants to, like, who goes, blah, 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 this is boring, I just want to see more zombies. I'm not watching The Last of Us to see gay people. I don't get that kind of mentality, to be honest, because again, and this is kind of a spoiler for the game and probably further in the show, but Ellie, the main central fucking character that everybody agrees is probably the best character, her or Joel, Ellie is fucking gay. Ellie is revealed to be gay in a DLC of the original game, and then goes on to be gay in the sequel game as well, with full-on relationships with a character named Dina. Last of Us is LGBT friendly to its core, and it always has been, because Bill was also vaguely gay in the game. Now, I get that you might have missed that because, you know, you might have just saw the note from Frank that you receive in the game explaining that he hates him and all this stuff that kind of slightly reveals that they had some sort of a relationship, and that he got angry at him and left. And I get that that's vague. They didn't exactly shout it in your face, but it was in there. There was an indication there. It's always been part of the source material. And if you claim to love the game so much, maybe you want to pay attention to the small details. But I think that there are a lot of people out there who are maybe just rushing through the game. The only point to them is the gameplay. Is that right? Because if so, I get why you're not liking the TV show at the moment. If you don't appreciate everything about the game, that fucking aligns. That makes a lot of sense to me. Another complaint, speaking of, that I've been reading a lot online is that this episode was just to push an agenda. This episode was just shoving it in your face and all this stuff, as if that they're, I don't know, shoving the literal characters' dicks at the camera or something like that. Like, that's not what's fucking going on. But something that I came to realize after reading a bunch of these comments is that there is a core difference between certain people. Some people don't want there to be bad representation of certain demographics. Some people just want, if they're gonna be gay characters in a piece of media, they want them to be good representation. They don't want them to just be caricatures. They don't want them to speak with the big gay lisp and act all flamboyant and stuff. They don't want it to be really obvious, because that's not what homosexuality really is. That's a depiction of it that we've all learned from media of the past. That's something that is just a stereotype and is offensive. Some people are against that type of representation. Some people don't want that. They want good representation, which is what Bill and Frank are in this episode. Because again, they are fairly gruff, tough men, and at least Bill definitely is. He is self-sufficient. He is this strong, possibly conservative man. He's not the gay stereotype that we've all come to know. He is just a normal fucking person. And that's what makes me love this representation of it so much, because he's just a person who happens to be gay, which is literally what every gay person is in real life. They're not a walking fucking stereotype. Much like another depiction of a gay person that I absolutely love from this movie called Other People, Jesse Plemons plays this character who you don't learn is gay until about halfway through, and they just vaguely mention it. And then you do see him with a man later on as well, but they just kind of vaguely mention that he's had boyfriends in the past or something like that. I don't remember the exact wording, but yeah, you find out like halfway through, because it's not essential to his character. The movie is not about his sexuality, it's about his relationship with his mum. That's a whole other thing, it doesn't really matter. But much like that, is the same with Bill here, where, you know, his main core story isn't about just being gay. It's about survival, and it's about love, and who he loves happens to be a man. And so that is where the core difference comes from these people. There are a lot of people who don't want to see bad representation, but what I've learned from this past week in all the online comments is that there are also people who just don't want to ever see any representation at all, of any minorities, of any, you know, any of that kind of stuff. To them, that's a threat for some fucking reason. And again, I don't really understand how they're so fragile to be threatened by just viewing anything involving this kind of stuff. I don't really get that mentality. I can't really get behind that, but that's still kind of the main important difference here, where there are a lot of people who just don't want to see any representation, and as soon as there is any representation, they accuse you. They accuse you of having this strong agenda of just showing another demographic. They accuse you of shoving it down your throat. They accuse you of trying to brainwash your kids and make them gay as these wild fucking conspiracy theories. Like, oh no, seeing this gay relationship is suddenly going to make your kid gay, like as if it works like that. There's a lot of absurd shit online, okay? And a lot of it, I get, you can't take it too seriously. You can't read this stuff and just be like, oh my god, every single time, just take them word for word. I understand that a lot of these people are fucking just dumbasses and we shouldn't pay attention to them. But I've read a lot of this shit online in the past week and it's disgusted me. It's honestly despicable. It's such immaturity as well. I think that's the main thing. And it's not just from fucking, you know, little kids and teenagers and shit. It's from grown-ass men who are stuck in their ways and who are never going to change their opinion on this. And so that makes videos like this maybe a bit pointless, because who am I talking to here? I'm not going to change anybody's mind. If you hated the episode because it had gay people in it, you're never going to change your mind about that. You're never going to turn around here. And I totally understand that in a way, because I'm not going to change my mind the other way. I'm not going to suddenly decide, oh, I hate this episode because they're gay. To me, it's not about being gay or not. That's not really the vital thing here. It's a relationship. That's the thing that you should be focusing on. You're not supposed to be, you know, hugely attracted to it. You know, you might be if you're, you know, if you're attracted to these people, that's your personal business. But most people probably aren't watching this episode thinking, oh yeah, this is really hot. But is that what all the homophobic people think we're doing? I honestly don't know. That's a genuine question. Do they think that we're watching this thinking, man, this is sexy? Because that's not fucking what I was thinking, okay? I wasn't thinking... I wasn't thinking the opposite. I wasn't like, it's disgusting, it's so unsexy. No, I was just... To me, it's somebody else's relationship. It's asexual to me. I'm coming at this from a voyeuristic point of view where I'm just watching these people intertwine with their relationship. That's the important part. It's the emotional part that you care about. And if you can't connect to that, I don't know, get fucked. That's what it comes down to, I think. But again, I'm still confused about who hated this episode but loves the games. I'm still confused about that. I'm still confused about lots of things when it comes to the Last of Us fandom. There's a lot of toxicity there. There's a lot of fucking hatred. And it's so strange coming from a game that is so poignant and emotional and heartbreaking and touching and just very, very fragile in a way. There are a lot of characters here who are very emotional. Joel himself is emotional as well. Yes, he seems like the stereotypical tough man kind of main character who just kills a bunch of people, and he is those things, but he also can't move on from his daughter's death, and he's also starting to find fatherhood in Ellie. You know, all these sorts of things. There's still an emotional core and arc to this character that is really the entire point. And if you don't give a shit about that stuff, I don't get why you ever liked the games, and I don't think you're ever gonna like the show, because an adaptation isn't going to have little video game moments where you have to be challenged by a zombie every so often. You have to have little games, you know, video gamey stuff every so often to keep you entertained. That's not how a show really works. The show is more going to be made up of the cutscenes. The action isn't really the point. And maybe I'm a little bit different, but that's another thing that I wanted to talk about. If you're in this only for the action, I feel like I watch things differently, because once the action starts, in a lot of media for me anyway, that's the time to kind of snooze for a second. In a lot of movies and stuff, when it gets to the action scenes, I'm like, oh, okay, so this is a break in the story just for a second for a little bit of entertainment, and then we're going to get back to the story once this action scene is over. Look, if the action is the point of your media, much like in The Raid or John Wick or whatever, then it's awesome and you enjoy the fuck out of it. But if it's something else that is more focused on the story with action in it, I often find myself not caring as much about the action. I can just like I can basically just stop watching for 5 minutes while they fight, and then, you know, once that's over, that's when the movie's gonna kind of start again. And maybe that's absolutely insane to me, and I do think I'm in the minority there. But to me, it kind of feels like that doesn't move the plot along. That's just, it's not gonna have any major consequences for the most part. Action scenes in Marvel movies aren't really fights for survival a lot of the time. You're not expecting the characters to die in the middle of the movie or anything, and so you're not really expecting the plot to progress that much with the action scenes. Now, The Last of Us, I will say, is a little bit more dangerous than that, I suppose, for our characters. We are scared that they're gonna die, and there are examples of characters dying. Tess died in episode 2, and Bill and Frank died in episode 3, but that didn't have anything to do with the action. But there was an action scene where Bill gets shot, and at that moment, I was like, shit, because that felt fucking huge. Just one character getting shot felt like it was such a big deal. It felt really dangerous. It felt like he was on the edge of his life at that moment, and that part really got me on the edge of my seat. Much more so than most action scenes in pretty much any other media where, I don't know, people get shot a few times and they're okay. They just walk it off, whatever. But here, The Last of Us is something that is so grounded, and I use that word purposefully because that's one of the difficulties. But The Last of Us is so grounded that everything does feel like it matters. And so I will say that the action does matter, but it's not the point. The point is the relationship drama. The point is the characters. The point is really the overall story. And yeah, like I said, if you're just in it for the action, I don't know what the fuck show you think you're watching. I don't really see the point of that. And I also don't see why anybody is really getting into this with excuses of, gay people, because that's just so fucking stupid and immature. You don't have to be gay to care about gay characters. You don't have to think it's sexy or some shit if that's what you're threatened by. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what people are threatened by. I don't think that it's an agenda that they're shoving down our throats. I think it's just representation of a few characters who happen to be gay, but most aren't. Most aren't, so get the fuck over it. Yeah, to me it was fantastic, and everybody who was just saying, it was boring, I think you're a bit of a fucking man, baby. Yeah, and that's all. That's all I gotta say. Sorry if this was long-winded and all that kind of shit, if it was a bit rambly, but hey, I just wanted to say something that was my opinion, and that's what I did. But so now we're gonna go, but before you do, please do that things, which are like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'm outie. Goodbye.